You know that feeling when someone plans something just for you? They think through every detail. A surprise dinner, a weekend away. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel appreciated, seen, loved. That's what Toni Henthorn thought she was getting. A 12th anniversary trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. Her husband told her, "Don't worry, I've got it all planned." And then Toni fell more than 120 feet off a cliff. No witnesses, no video, just her husband and his version of that tragic day. So did she trip, or was it the perfect cover for a murder? What the hell happened? This is Death National Park. Now, according to Harold Henthorn, this trip was all about his wife, Toni. He wanted it to be special, a chance to celebrate, to reconnect, to see the views. He'd even scouted the park twice before to make sure that it was perfect. So his plan, as he explains, is that he was going to take his wife, Toni, on a hike in Rocky Mountain National Park, up Deer Mountain. It's not too hard. It's not too easy. A little picnic, a few photos, memories for the scrapbook. And Toni was thrilled with all of Harold's preparation, even arranging for someone to watch their 7-year-old daughter so that they could have the whole day to themselves. Harold said they were walking up the trail, and Toni wanted to veer off the path, to take pictures. She wanted to get that close to the edge because she thought it was going to be the perfect spot. And then everything changed. At 5:30 p.m., a call comes into 911 and park dispatch, and we've got the audio.
911, what's the address, the emergency?
Hello, my name is Harold Henthorn. I'm in the Rocky Mountain National Park.
Okay.
My wife has fallen on the north summit of Deer Mountain, on the Deer Mountain Trail. And she's in really critical condition. She's had a bad fall. Her feet about 30, 40 feet, 30 feet.
And he's very specific right from the beginning on what type of rescue is necessary.
I did an alpine mountain rescue team immediately.
And I want you to listen to how calm he is. He's almost like a doctor reporting to another doctor as he looks down at his unconscious, very injured wife. Now, this would cause big problems and big speculation later. 𝗧3.
She is a white female, 50 years old, great health. She has respiration approximately 5 to 8 beats a minute. Her pulse is about between 60 and 80 beats a minute.
Rangers rush towards the location as fast as they can. Daylight is starting to fade. When they finally reach the couple, darkness is definitely closing in, and Toni's injuries are catastrophic. Now, Harold says he scrambled down to her. He tried CPR for 30, maybe 40 minutes. He's trying to get cell phone receptions. He couldn't find any. He's moving around. He's calling out. He's waving his phone in the air and nothing. But then finally, he gets through to 911, which is what we just heard. But in the end, it was too late. Toni Henthorn was dead, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, Harold told Rangers the same story. He had been celebrating their 12th anniversary together. It was a surprise hike. It was planned. It was prepared. And then now is unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Now, of course, the community rallied around this sudden widower, now left to raise this child alone. It was a tragic accident. That was Harold's story. And for a while, it held up, at least until investigators started to look closer. But here's where the story starts to unravel, and I mean unravel fast. That whole, well, we just wandered over here for a quick picture thing, yeah, no. Pat, if we could pull up 12A, the map, just look at this. They weren't a little off the trail, not 10 feet, not 20 feet. We're talking 300 feet off the marked path. And this wasn't some gentle meadow or a nice little overlook with a bench and a view. No, this was steep, jagged, ankle-busting terrain. I'm talking loose gravel, boulders, sudden drop-offs, the kind of place experienced hikers will tiptoe around. And Toni wasn't a hiker at all. That was not her thing. And for what? Doing this didn't bring them to some scenic outlook. There wasn't some Rocky Mountain panorama, no glistening alpine lake. Just a random dangerous ledge that made zero sense for a wedding anniversary stroll. And then the fall. Now, when Harold called 911, he told them that she had fallen about 30 to 40 feet. Okay, sounds bad enough, right? But when investigators measure it, it wasn't 50 feet or 40 feet. It was 120 feet. So he was downplaying this right from the beginning. And it gets even stranger. Harold tells the dispatcher that he couldn't get service, that he was pacing around, waving his phone in the air, hunting for bars. But when park rangers check later, the signal came through just fine. They tested it multiple times. They could never recreate the no cell reception story. Then there's the CPR story. Harold says he spent 30 to 45 minutes doing CPR, trying to do everything he could. Now, look, if it's someone you love, I get it. You're going to fight for them. You're going to keep going until your arms give out. So I'm not knocking that at all. But if you've ever done CPR, you know it's brutal. I mean, professionals swap out every 2 minutes because your arms, your chest, your lungs, they're just shot. After 10 minutes, you're wrecked. After 40 minutes, you're drenched in sweat, gasping for air, shaking from exhaustion. Now, to be fair, there was a 911 dispatcher who was coaching him over the phone and had experience with around 240 CPR instruction calls. But she would later reveal something really damning. She said, and let me get the quote right, stand by here, "I didn't believe he was doing CPR. It's very exhausting. I could hear every breath on other calls, but not his." So meanwhile, Harold is making a point to tell everyone, rescuers, investigators, anyone who would listen, yeah, I did CPR for 40 minutes, almost like he was building credibility with the clock instead of doing anything to show any type of emotion. And when rescuers finally arrived, they said his demeanor was cool, calm, collected. You heard it on the 911 call. Now, look, everyone handles stress and grief differently. But if you've got the panicked energy of a husband who just watched his wife fall to her death and you've been hammering CPR for 40 minutes, you don't look or sound like that. Oh, and remember how Harold told people he had scouted the trail twice before the big anniversary hike? Well, twice, that sounds sweet, right? Making sure it's perfect for your special day. Well, guess what? Investigators found that cell phone records showed something very different. He had been to that trail 9 times in the 6 weeks leading up to Toni's death. 9. Now, I don't know about you, but most people planning a picnic don't need 9 rehearsals. That's not planning, that's plotting. And then there's the map. Inside Harold's vehicle, investigators find a folded map of Rocky Mountain National Park. And on the map is the Deer Mountain section. There is an X, not a little dot somewhere nearby, not a vague around this general area, an X on the cliff's edge, the exact spot where Toni fell. Let me say that again, not the trail, not the general vicinity, off the trail, on the cliff's edge, and that X wasn't just close, it was dead on. So you don't mark a spot like that because it's pretty. You mark it because it matters. And the only thing that happened on that X was Toni's fall. Now, if the map wasn't enough to raise the hair on the back of your neck, investigators had something else, something that made them stop cold. A photo from the scene showed Toni's lipstick. It was perfectly intact, not a smudge, not a smear. And the medical examiner found no physical signs of CPR, no ribs broken, no chest bruising, no abrasions. And if he wasn't trying to save her in those crucial minutes when he was being coached through, what was he doing? But at the end of the day, you still can't help think, why? Why would he do this? This has to be some kind of horrible misunderstanding. But Harold wasn't some sketchy drifter. He was a successful businessman, a philanthropist, the guy who raised money for charities, represented them, supported them. He showed up at church events. He was a devoted husband to Toni, who was a respected ophthalmologist. So as investigators are trying to square the model husband image with all of these inconsistencies, something strange shows up in the reports. Mrs. Henthorn, found on the side of the road. Okay, wait, the side of the road. This isn't in the park. This isn't even in the same decade. And it's not Toni. Toni wasn't the first Mrs. Henthorn. There was another, Lynn Henthorn. And here's where the story starts to feel like deja vu, the bad kind. It turns out this wasn't the first time Harold's wife had died in a so-called accident. Back in 1995, Harold was married to Lynn. Now, according to him, they'd spent the day in the mountains, heading home along this dark, lonely stretch of Highway 67, the kind of road where if you broke down, you might not see another car for an hour. So Harold says they pulled over to change a flat tire. They're working together. He's looking for a lug nut. She's near the jack. And somehow the Jeep Cherokee slips and it comes down on her. Now, she was still alive when first responders got to her, but she didn't make it. Now, of course, there was no autopsy, no witnesses, and the only person who saw what happened was Harold. Now, at the time, investigators, they had questions, but without any hard proof or reason to suspect, they really didn't do much or couldn't do much, so the case was closed. But after Toni's death, they reopened the file, and that's when they found something that could explain exactly why both women ended up dead. What investigators found would blow the case wide open. Federal investigators discovered Harold was living a double life. The philanthropic career he bragged about never existed. They found fake business cards with Harold's name and titles, companies he never worked for. They called the organizations he claimed to represent. No one's ever heard of him. No one had ever paid him a dime. And those business trips he was always taking, well, they weren't for business at all. Investigators later learned that on many of those trips, Harold was actually scouting remote locations inside Rocky Mountain National Park. And then came the money. Not one, not two, multiple life insurance policies. Every single one naming Harold as the sole beneficiary, none of which Toni ever knew about, just like with his first wife, Lynn. But this time, Toni's death paid out a jackpot. With her fall, Harold fell into $4.7 million. In 2015, after 10 hours of deliberation, Harold Henthorn was convicted of the first-degree murder of his wife, Toni, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The $4.7 million life insurance proceeds were never paid out. His 7-year-old daughter was placed under the guardianship of her aunt and uncle in Mississippi. The truth is, innocent people end up in true crime stories every day. Don't let it be you. Get the Protect Yourself toolkit below. Now, keep the true crime binge watching going. Click here to watch the next story, which has got more twists than you're ready for.